everyone, my name is Liana. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be filming two different videos about influencers and brands that I don't support and why. So I mentioned this in a video recently. Which video was it? I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh yes, it was unpopular makeup opinions. I kind of briefly talked about a list of brands that I'd been working on, brands that I don't support, and a lot of you said that you'd be interested in seeing a video about this. So then I figured I might as well split it into two, a list of brands and a list of influencers. I'm going to start with brands because, you know, sometimes people kind of tie into the brand. So I might as well talk about brands first. I'm going to film them concurrently and probably will put them up back to back. The first thing I want to address, actually, and I'll try and word it as well as I can, is that when talking about brands and support, there's a little bit of trickiness to this. It's almost a sense of privilege in a way because let's say there's a drugstore brand that happens to do something problematic. This is such an umbrella term and simplifies things. But let's say there's a drugstore brand. I have a couple of drugstore brands on this list. And so yeah, they do something maybe you don't agree with the ethics behind it, and not everybody can afford to stop supporting a brand like that because maybe it's an accessible brand, number one, and number two, they have something that maybe they literally can't get anywhere else. Now, there are so many beauty brands, there really are, but it's not always about the number of brands available. It's about the number of brands available to the person and whether or not the person can, you know, afford to purchase from a brand. So if we were to take, for example, a really popular drugstore brand, Maybelline, they have over 40 shades in their foundation line, and they are, I don't know, around under $10, I would want to say, roughly. So that's another example. If you maybe can only find your foundation in that range and maybe the brand does something, again, you don't agree with, there's a lot of issues that come up when it comes to whether or not you can support a brand or not. You can just simply cut ties with a brand. And when stuff like that happens, I don't think it's nice to look down on somebody for continuing to support a brand. Having said that, I think there are a lot of ways that you can buy from a brand and not continue to promote them. For example, I have a lot of Kat Von D products. I don't support Kat Von D, but I no longer tag her in Instagram posts giving her further promotion and exposure. If I use a product, yeah, I'll let you know what it is, but I'll just put KVD. I won't tag Kat Von D Beauty. I rarely mention what the product is. So there's a lot of ways to get around this. You may not even want to mention what the product is, where the product came from. So there are ways to do this. Deciem, The Ordinary. I use their skincare because it's one of the only skincare brands that is affordable for somebody like me, and one of the only brands that agrees with my skin. I can't afford to buy a $40 hyaluronic acid serum every 2 months. It's just not going to happen. I understand that the brand has problems, but that's just the way it is. So this is a very long introduction to a video that's likely going to be very long, but it is a complicated subject that needs a certain amount of nuance to discuss it, and I just wanted to put that out there. Now, having said that, I think we should start. And I do want to start with Almay. So why Almay? Well, there are a lot of brands that have poor shade ranges, and you might be wondering why I'm picking Almay specifically, and it's because they did at one point have shades for Black women and women in general with a deeper skin tone. At some point in time, they started to cut that out. So they had, from around 1991, their darker tones of Almay, and then around early to mid 2000s, they rebranded and completely phased that out. They started marketing their line as the American look and featured predominantly white, blonde women in their ads, like Kate Hudson and Carrie Underwood. So the issue with that is that they started selling only about 3 shades in each product and conditioning this as the American look. Well, the American look is everything. It doesn't just specifically look blonde, blue-eyed, and white. So that's pretty darn disgusting to just rebrand in such a way that excludes everybody, basically. So now we're in 2018, and their current spokesmodel is Rashida Jones. Now, she is half Black. However, she is still fairly light, and their shade range doesn't really go beyond her. So there's still a lot of work that they have to do. They went from having 3 shades to something like 12 shades. So that's not much of a jump. The next brand is Beautyblender. So Beautyblender was actually founded by a Latina makeup artist. For a long time, they were strictly producing sponges and sponge cleansers. So I have their Beautyblender liquid cleanser, for example, and I use it to clean not only my Real Techniques sponges, but I use it to clean brushes. And so, for example, this is my blush brush. By the time I finish cleaning a brush like that, it's completely got all the stains out, which is amazing. The problem is earlier this year, they started teasing a new product, and it turned out to be a foundation. The foundation had at least 30 shades. It might have had slightly more than that. But they were all beige, except for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4. And it was Trend Mood that initially showed the promotional photos. So Trend Mood, I don't know her name other than Trend Mood, I'm sorry. She got blamed for this initially by the brand. The brand said, that's not what our foundation range looks like. You put a filter on it. Well, that's not true though, because very shortly after that, they put out their own photos and they looked the same. They started sending out PR and people were swatching them. The shades looked the same. What only compounded the issue and made it worse was the fact that Beautyblender was responding to critical comments and claiming that their range had at least half of the shades meant for people of color, which simply wasn't true. The Black women who either received it in PR or went out and bought it themselves swatched the last few shades on their chest, on their arm, on their face. And you could see very clearly what was happening was that there were so many gaps that many of them couldn't find a shade. They were too light, too dark, too red, too golden. All of the light shades were very smooth in terms of gradient. You had so many that looked so similar because they had the same shade depth or very similar shade depth, just slightly different undertones. So they focused a lot on that and then neglected the deeper end, which happens a lot in foundations. And as somebody who was a makeup artist, and not only that, but a person of color herself, the brand owner should have known this and fixed that. The other thing was she said that it was meant for Latino people. But they come in a broad range of shades from, you know, my skin tone to very deep. So again, you have a problem there. So overall, it was just a mess. And understandably, a lot of people upset. And I don't think the brand responded to concerns well at all. Next person is Huda Beauty, or Huda Katan. She's the owner. So a lot of people have had some concerns about Huda since her brand started. The first issue that a lot of people saw was that the brand rarely used to post Black women or men. And if and when they did, it was often in a very mocking way, a very joking way. And so people started expressing their concerns to Huda, and there was a response. However, the response seemed to come around the same time that Huda was putting out her first foundation. And could this have been a form of trying to profit off of inclusivity? I'm white, so I can't say for sure. I'm not an authority on that, but the timing of it seems odd, considering maybe 2 or 3 deeper skinned faces made the cut each month prior to that, and after that there were many more. I looked through and actually found a photo from, I think it was 2016. I'll put it up on the screen. It was a post from Huda Beauty and a post from Huda. It's a photo of 2 little girls, and Huda is using a quote from Maya Angelou in order to promote the All Lives Matter ideology, which is co-opting from the Black Lives Matter movement and is incredibly harmful. If you don't know why this is harmful, then, I mean, a quick Google search will do the work for you. But basically, Black Lives Matter is saying that all lives matter, but that police brutality and many other forms of racism have affected Black lives, and we need to listen to and pay attention to that. And every time that somebody says all lives matter, or blue lives matter, or rich lives matter, you are detracting from a movement that was made to focus on Black lives. So yeah, it's just a disgusting way to derail a conversation. Additionally, you'll have never seen these types of conversations happening prior to the Black Lives Matter movement. Nobody said all lives matter until Black Lives Matter happened. Now, Huda has reposted images of girls darkening their skin with her foundation. She posted this in a positive light. She's also written blog posts on how to lighten or bleach your vulva with really harmful ingredients, which in itself is a form of racism, forming the belief that anything that is darker is uglier, is colorism. You know, like, this is something that happens a lot in other parts of the world, particularly where Huda is from. And she's perpetuating that instead of telling women that it's okay to love your body the way it looks. It's also been suggested that Huda has not given enough attention to the LGBTQ plus community, which I agree with. I think that that's another conversation that needs to be incredibly nuanced, because she does live in Dubai, and the Middle East in general has a lot of laws in effect that could hurt anybody who speaks up on issues like these. However, it seems like she's willing to post some gay men as long as their follower count is high enough, which is interesting. Now, Eden Minerals is the next brand. I've reviewed 2 samples of their foundation that I received from a friend in the US, and they both have a poor shade range. Their Nordic Veil, which is their higher coverage foundation, only comes in 9 shades, which is worse than their lighter coverage foundation. Their Nurskin foundation comes in 18 shades. So when I was reviewing both of these foundations, I found Lavette Giallo, because whenever I do a foundation, I look for reviews on other skin tones. I want to know what it looks like on somebody who isn't pale like myself, because I don't know anything about foundations for deeper skin. I can't know what that's like. So if I look up a review, then I can see, well, maybe this foundation has so many shades and it looks good to me on paper. Once I see it applied on the skin, I can see there are undertone problems, and clearly they didn't work as hard for them as they did for somebody like me. This was the problem with Eden Minerals. The Norskin foundation undertones were mislabeled and overall just kind of wrong. And not only that, but Lavette had conversations with the company that did not go well. And I was very disappointed in the way that the company responded to Lavette. I thought that they were very rude to her. I'm going to have a whole bunch of links below so you can read on all of these different companies, including Lavette's video, which was the first video I found of hers. You know, like, it's not wrong to suggest that a predominantly or all-white company bring in people of color to help them with deeper shades, because we have no knowledge of that. So hopefully Eden Minerals does end up listening to her, but they probably won't. Let's be honest. Illamasqua. I was sent a foundation sample from them, again from my friend in the US. I have not tried it, and I'm not going to be trying it on camera anyway. It's old. I just threw it out. But in 2017, Illamasqua sent out a whole bunch of emails to their subscriber base, saying that they refused to knowingly sell any product to Trump supporters. So they said they would never discriminate against race, color, nationality, ethnicity, gender, age, disability, sexual orientation, or religion, and they would accept responsibility on challenging social and climate issues, speak for those who cannot speak up for themselves, uphold the principles of the Sophie charity to stamp out prejudice, intolerance, and hatred. I have a couple of issues with this. The first of which being that they can't know who supports Trump and who doesn't. It's not as if a person can go through their checkout and it would just show up in their system. This person voted for Trump. You can't sell to them. The second being when they say speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. Who are they talking about here? Are they talking about minorities? Because minorities have a voice. If you're talking about having a voice for the voiceless, generally what that means is minorities. But what it should mean is animals. Animals have no voice. Also, did they forget about their racist ads from 2012? Because they came out with a White Christmas campaign which featured the same Caucasian model on the left and right of the screen, one in all white makeup. The second side was all black makeup. It said, "Not dreaming of a white Christmas." It's received massive amounts of backlash over the years for how closely it mimicked blackface and minstrelsism. But Illamasqua defended this by saying, "We thank and acknowledge your comments regarding the above image. Obviously, it was never our intention to cause offense. Illamasqua has always celebrated the right to self-expression, and we continually push creative and artistic boundaries, priding ourselves on working with models of many ethnic backgrounds to reinforce this point. Alex Box, Illamasqua's creative director, has emphasized that this campaign is about color on the skin, not color of the skin, depicting polarity between the two images, not race." Incidentally, the brand is still largely represented by white people and has a largely white shade range, so they can grandstand all they want with their 2017 campaign promises. But they've done nothing over the years to support what it is that they're preaching. It Cosmetics, they are the high-end Almay. This started off as a small brand owned by a woman named Jamie Kern Lima. She started the brand as a way to showcase real women with real skin issues, as she herself has struggled with her skin. The problem is that, much like Almay preaching the all-American look, It Cosmetics' idea of real women has been limited as their shade range. They only have a handful of base shades, and it's been that way up until this year. In fact, in 2017, Jamie made a very impassioned speech about inclusivity in the beauty industry, talking about being a woman or even a plus-size woman and how hard she's had it. Her speech completely ignored the struggle of non-white women in the beauty industry and how even her brand has neglected them. So this did not go unnoticed, not at all. Many women of color, including Jackie Aina, called her out on this, as they've always been left out by It Cosmetics as a brand. Calls for action from the brand always resulted in the response of, "We're working on it, new shades coming soon." Well, that was years ago, and this stuff does take a little bit of time. I do understand that. But It Cosmetics has not been a small company for quite some time now. In fact, they were acquired by L'Oreal for over $1 billion. It wasn't until this year that the brand released more than a few shades. They have their Bye Bye Under Eye Concealer, which now comes in over 40, with no foundation to match this. There's still no word if any of their other products are expanding in shade range, including their best-selling CC Cream, which is still somewhere around 10 to 12 shades. Lemonhead LA is an indie brand that makes glitter.
They actually seem to think they're the founders of glitter gel, even though glitter gel has been around since, I don't know, the 90s, and they get super offended every time another brand comes out with one.
The owner is a Trump supporter, or at least she joked about it, at the very least. Their slogan, their very public slogan on their very public Instagram says, "Make glitter great again." And there are photos of her wearing a MAGA hat, which the owner claims was just a joke before Trump got elected. Lethal Cosmetics is another indie brand. So before I even delve further into this, you can see it pretty clearly just by going to their Instagram feed. If you look at all their photos, how many non-white people do you see? So I saw 2 posts within the past 12 months, both of which were arms-only photo swatches. They don't seem to post actual makeup looks, face looks by women of color, men of color. On one photo, the skin was considerably lighter. This was from Lethal themselves, and the darker arm was a repost from a separate account. In instances I could find where professional swatches were done, 9 out of 10 times they were done on a white arm. The one photo I found with 3 arms proposed to do swatches on 3 separate skin tones for the brand. The representation was troubling. There was barely any difference in skin tone between the light, medium, and deep arms. I contacted another user on Instagram. Her name is @Sounthly. She has stated in her brand's I do not support list that Lethal was bullying, colorist, and racist, and I wanted to hear her thoughts about this as a German influencer who is more familiar with this German brand. She sent me photos of a full conversation that a friend had with Lethal Cosmetics. They asked Lethal to consider having darker skinned models on their page, particularly for swatches, as this is very helpful for people when determining whether or not a shade would work on their skin tone. They got extremely offended and suggested that idea was racist, and that the fact that they hadn't posted any photos of black women, in particular deep-skinned black women, wasn't an example of racism on their part, but an example of them being a small brand with small means, so don't bully them, basically. Next up is Lime Crime. Now, Lime Crime has a very extensive history. Their founder, Doe Deer, is just generally a shitty person. She made legal threats against a 13-year-old girl on LiveJournal over a photo credit. At the start of Lime Crime's inception, they were simply repackaging wholesale eye pigments and selling them at a higher price under a new name. They basically got a head start on the whole private labeling industry. Doe then began suing people who gave negative reviews of her brand. Bloggers with ads on their site were targeted in particular because Doe was under the impression that their negative reviews were for profit. Okay. Most were cease and desist letters with threats against these people to take the reviews down and replace them with apologies. But a lawsuit against a woman named Michelle Jasinski for damages and loss of sales of up to $250,000 is on public record. Even Temptalia, Christine, was involved in this at one point for reviewing them unfavorably. She did not take her reviews down as far as I know. In 2008, after the official launch of Lime Crime as a brand, Doe wore a Hitler costume on Halloween. The image was posted on her blog, and though it was deleted, most of the comments underneath that were favorable, telling her how wonderful she looked. In 2012, they used a white model to launch their China Doll palette, a classic case of whitewashing and Orientalism, as the model was also made to wear cultural attire that does not belong to her. The slogan was also incredibly grossly worded, as it read, "Don't let her milky skin, pouty mouth, and flushed cheeks fool you. Underneath the poised facade, there lies a heart of a tigress." They issued a classic non-apology consisting of the very basic, "Sorry, you were offended." They've been briefly stocked at several different retailers over the years, including Sephora, but always ended up with so much controversy they ended up being taken off the shelves. The brand still censored negative reviews on every single one of these retailers' websites, all the way through 2014 when they presumably launched their own. Customers were reporting fraud of up to $10,000, but they denied anything was wrong. In fact, for a very long time, they didn't email customers. When they finally did decide to say something, it was on Instagram, a platform that many people, to this day, still don't have any involvement with, and therefore can't view. Many customers were never reimbursed to this day. A class action lawsuit is being looked into for this. Many people have also had complaints of multiple chemical sensitivities to their products, and instead of their concerns being addressed, these customers are blocked. Doe Deer has since been removed as CEO from the company. However, she remains on the board and still does receive profits. Since the brand is such a goddamn mess, I want nothing to do with it. Newt Sticks is another Trump supporter, or again, at least joked about it. There were photos of Ali Frankel, who is a co-CEO of the company. She was wearing a MAGA hat in front of Trump Towers, giving the thumbs up. And her sister and mom, also co-owners, made jokes about it in her comment section. All evidence of this has since been deleted, but I did see it prior to it being taken down and can confirm it was real. God, we have two companies technically involved with Trump, Revlon and Flesh Beauty. They are sister companies. So the CEO of Revlon is the CEO of Flesh Beauty. Flesh Beauty is capitalizing on being a diverse beauty line for everyone of every skin tone, marketing to preach inclusivity with its foundation range of 40 plus shades. Yet Ronald Perlman donated $630,000 to the Trump campaign, which just goes to show that he would love to profit off of people of color and not so much care about them. The previous Revlon CEO, Lorenzo Del Pani, was also accused of making racist and anti-Semitic remarks before he was removed from the company. So the company has a history of racism. Tarte has a long history of poor customer service. This was the first issue of theirs I became aware of. Many people were reporting orders that were never received damaged shipments, or received the wrong items. Trying to contact the brand seemed difficult. I would read their concerns on social media, hearing that they had tried repeatedly to contact customer service only for them to be ignored or blocked. They have had 1 or 2 major data breaches at this point. I can't remember if it's been 1 or 2. They have also had a history of very poor shade ranges, even prior to the Tarte Shape Tape Foundation, which was released this year and only made things so much worse. They released 2 formulas, both a matte and a hydrating, in their Shape Tape Foundation, and it was bad. The deeper shades were a complete afterthought, and it was just bad. I feel like a company that size, who sends so many influencers on brand trips and obviously has a lot of money, they put out a couple of shades literally a few weeks after they released the original ones. They knew what they were doing. They knew. It's not an excuse of being a small company. It's not an excuse of not having enough money. Even if you can only produce 12 shades, or was it 15? I think it was 15 shades per foundation. You could have combined those into a nice big 30 shade foundation range, had it very smooth and even throughout, and you just chose not to. So, yeah. And additionally, they had an interview with a website, it might have been Pop Sugar, where they said that the reason for them doing this, because it was released in January, was because people are lighter in the wintertime and darker in the summertime, which is so stupid. Z Palette. So they are known for releasing their magnetic palettes. When they announced that they would be coming out with a depotting tool called the Z Potter or Z Potter, which retailed for over $80 US and was essentially a hot plate, people got mad, understandably. So people weren't happy with the price point, and especially considering what the product was, they made it known, and the owner of Z Palette went on a very angry tirade. They were responding to every negative comment and just bullied people. I'm sure I can find some examples of these responses and put them up on screen for you so you can see how petty and really immature they were. And the last 2 things here are groups of companies. I have MLMs, multi-level marketing schemes, things like Lip Sense, Avon, Mary Kay. These are essentially pyramid schemes. I talked about these in a video I did with Rena Reviews, and of course John Oliver has talked about these in a much more in-depth and intelligent way than I can. Basically, they prey on women, especially women with a lower income. So somebody like me, for example, they lure them in with the promise of being a self-made success and entrepreneur, and trap them by selling them a bunch of merchandise that they can never possibly sell all of or make a profit off of themselves. The person will always be in debt. Buying from these companies only helps to support a terrible business model and a truly horrible, insidious marketing scheme. Finally, private label brands. Brands that claim to be small indie companies, but really they're extremely shady, not unique at all. They intentionally misspell their ingredients online so you can't search for formula dupes on Google. Take away the spelling mistakes and you'll see that they're identical to thousands of other formulas. Oftentimes the quality ends up being extremely cheap and causing sensitivity for many people. Sometimes people have reactions with the ingredients because they left ingredients off the list or misspelled them on purpose, as I said. There's no way of knowing under which conditions these palettes were made, considering they are all cheaply made in bulk in China. Like basically, if what you're buying is being produced for only a few cents and it's being sold for $20, chances are the labor conditions aren't great, which is a concern. So I am still having some trouble talking for huge amounts of time. It seems my voice is starting to crack a bit, so I'm probably going to have to wait until I film the second part of this video. I can wait until after dinner or something. But anyway, that is the first part of this, which is talking about brands I don't support. You might be wondering, where is Jeffree Star and Kat Von D? I feel because they are individual faces of the brands, I'm going to talk about them on the people I don't support list, though I do understand that they are brands themselves. It was just an easier way for me to split this up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know some of the brands that you don't support and why, because maybe I can learn something new that I don't know. And I post Mondays and Fridays here on this channel in the afternoons Eastern time. I'll see you in the next video very shortly. Bye, everyone.